Greetings folks, welcome to another episode of Past Planes. This is number 9 in the series. They're not coming as frequently now because I'm sort of catching up to the planes that I've owned or reviewed, and I need a little bit of time on them to really form a good opinion of what I think of them and how they fly. First up in this episode, we're going to look at the Eachine Micro Skyhunter from Banggood, that was, of course. Now this is a fantastic little plane. I absolutely love it. Or I don't have it anymore. I've actually given it away to a friend because he ran over his with his car and destroyed it. I thought I could give it away because I thought I'm going to make a scratch-built one for myself because it's just such a great little configuration. The twin boom pusher, very much like the Depron Spectre that I made, but a lot smaller version. It makes for sort of a solid, tough little agile plane, I guess. They have really good anti-stall characteristics for some reason, and it's a little bit like a mini wing, I suppose. You can rip them around. They're very, very agile, fast, and just good fun. And the Micro Skyhunter, it's built out of really good materials, and being small, in relative terms, it's sort of, the foam is stronger, being a smaller plane, I guess. So it's quite tough. You can crash it, because it's reasonably light, you can crash it and not do too much damage at all. Now this is a good little plane because it comes complete with a 25 milliwatt FPV camera, all in one sort of backpack sort of setup. It was the, what was it, the EF01, which is a good little camera for a small flying field sort of size area, I suppose. And I just couldn't find anything wrong with this plane. It's just a really good design. It's sort of a good little niche, different from other planes, I suppose, being small, being the twin boom pusher. I just really, really like it. It had some really nice features. It had a double canopy cover. You could, if you're not doing FPV, you could put the top on the canopy cover, and they're all sort of held in by magnets. Really, really nice design. You could pull the top cover off, mount your little FPV camera on there, plug it straight into the balance port of your 3S battery, and off you go. And it's a crazy experience on FPV because it's sort of so fast and nippy and all over the place. It's quite an adrenaline rush flying it on FPV. Great fun. Keep watching the channel, and one day I'll do a scratch build of the Micro Skyhunter. Great little plane. Now next up was the XK A1200, which is another very interesting plane. It's a 1200mm pusher glider, motor glider, I suppose. But it came with a stabilisation electronics in it, sort of flight control board, I guess. You could switch it off, or you could switch it to semi-stabilised or fully stabilised. I rarely use stabilisers, so it's all quite foreign to me. Now, it's also an interesting plane because all the servo connections were hard mounted into the wings and the tail surfaces as well. So you just had to plug the wings in, click it into place, and the servos would be connected. And same with the tail, you just screw the tail on and it sort of mates the servo plugs together, which is a really good idea if it works. Now, I found on mine that the rudder connection wasn't connecting together properly, just a little bit of quality control failure, I suppose. The tail just didn't fit on properly, so the servo connection was never properly made. So I actually had to dig into the foam and pull out the wires and sort of hardwire them together. It worked perfectly on the wings. Every time you plug it in, the servos would be electrically connected, which makes it very, very quick and easy to break it down to transport. You could almost use it as a backpack plane, this one. It flew really, really well. Aerodynamically, it was very, very low drag, which meant that it would fly well even in decent amount of wind. Very efficient too. It had a 2S 2000 battery, I think, and it had a flight time of something like 40 minutes on one battery, which is just phenomenal. I found the instructions for the stabilisation were very, very unclear. I was never sure how to set it up, whether you had to push the button to re-level the gyros every time, or I just couldn't work that out from the instructions. There's also another button for rebinding, I think, which I really had no idea how to do that. It was a ready to fly, so it came with quite a nice radio that was I think it was a Futaba compatible radio, so you could use it for other models as well if you got the right receiver for it. So that was quite nice. Reasonably expensive, but sort of a high-tech beginner's model, I guess. And yeah, it's sort of a great idea. It comes as a FPV version as well. Really, really nice looking model. This plane was a really nice slope soarer as well because it was so low drag. It's really, really fine fuselage. Slope soaring with stabilisation on was interesting, but I found it stabilised it so well that it almost stabilised it into a stall. I guess the stabilisation doesn't really understand slope soaring, but well, interesting exercise anyway. I've also given this one away to a workmate who's just getting into flying. Anyway, really nice little plane, highly recommended for beginners. So next up is the Sonic Model Cessna 182, which is just a really nice looking scale Cessna with tricycle gear, big wing, 1500 millimeters, came with flaps and everything. The only problem was the steerable nose wheel structure was just too weak. Every landing you'd come in and have to bend the nose wheel back down again. It would bend sideways, bend backwards. So I wasn't impressed with that basically. They really need to, realise that modelers aren't perfect pilots and build them strong enough for general use. So I set about reconfiguring it to a tail dragger design. I took the nose wheel off, moved the other two main gear forward, and that was a lot of fun then. I really enjoyed flying that, although it did have a tendency to stall. It would drop a wing if you turn too slowly, or out of a loop it would often stall as well, which was a big surprise for a Cessna 182 scale model. Of course, they're meant to be pretty well unstallable as a full-scale plane. That really surprised me. I thought it was going to be a very, very docile, easy to plane to fly, but you really had to watch out for the stall tendency. It was a great camera platform, especially with looking down the fuselage forward. It just this wonderful view of the plane in front of you. Felt very, very realistic. Everyone commented on what a great view that was. So it had its good points, but ultimately it didn't really have a home in my hangar. I have other planes that I'd much prefer to fly than this one, so I eventually stripped it for parts and got rid of the foam, basically. So that was the Cessna 182. Next up we have this beast, which is the FMS Extra 300. And this is the most serious plane I own. I think it's very, very solidly built. A beautiful model. I haven't actually flown it since the maiden, so I've still got a lot of learning to do, and this one's a keeper. I'll keep this plane for the future, and when I get the time I'll spend a lot more hours flying this one and learning how to fly a bit of 3D maybe. But yeah, great plane, heaps of power, heaps of wing area, rugged landing gear, enormous control surfaces, good quality gear, highly recommended if you want to dip your toe in 3D flying. Yes, as I said, I haven't actually flown it after the maiden. I've just been busy with other things, so I can't tell you much more about it other than it's a ripper. That'll have a permanent spot in my hangar. The FMS Extra 300. And finally, in this episode, we have the Dynam Primo Bush plane, which, like the FMS Extra 300, I haven't flown it since the maiden, but I loved it during the maiden. And again, this is another plane that will have a permanent spot in my hangar. I love the bush plane concept, the Hobby King Tundra style of planes with the big flaps, big control surfaces, monstrous wheels, rugged landing gear. Throw them around and have fun sort of plane. Fly slow, do aerobatics, have fun with short takeoff and landings. The only problem I had, well, there are a couple of problems with the build of this plane. There's not enough space to get a decent sized battery in there, so I've sort of enlarged the hatch a little bit. Easy job to do, but I don't know why they've restricted it to be so small. The tail wheel assembly just doesn't work really. You have to end up gluing the tail wheel in there to keep it in position. It's just a poor design, that little bracket that holds everything together at the back. Not a major deal, easily fixed. But it's a ripper plane and another one that in the future I'll spend a lot more time flying. Highly recommended. Alright, well that's all for this episode. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to look for the Easter egg. Those of you who have been watching will know all about the Easter eggs in these past planes videos. So thanks for watching. See you next time.